What we're going to be talking about today is how to drive sales teams and a sales pipeline in the new world. Generative AI came about quite a while ago by this point, almost 3 years by now, but it has been somewhat lagging, reaching non-R&D functions. So obviously, if you're an R&D, which no one here is most likely, that has been very steadily progressing. But for the rest of the organization, I think there was a shift that started around 8 to 10 months ago. So the one thing I want to say that if you're here right now, I think you're just a little bit ahead of the curve. And I want to rest assured that everything that we're going to talk today, I think very little organizations have already finished the process. Specifically today, we're going to be talking about how to drive sales team through the Gen AI transformation. I'm going to look at it from a couple of different perspectives. So first of all, in levels, I'm going to look at it from the sales rep perspective and also from the sales manager perspective. And I'm going to talk about it from 4 different levels of implementation, which are obviously progressing. And obviously, as you progress, there'll be more and more value. Let's begin. So, first of all, myself. My name, as Noga said, is Jonathan Yarkoni, and a little bit about my background. So early on, I started as a software engineer and a team lead. Spent 4 years at Iron Source, which later merged with Unity. Then I had a startup, and then I joined Google. Spent the better part of half a decade at Google. In the capacity of a sales engineer, I was in charge of the AI and ML. That happened from 2017 to 2023. And from 2023 up until now, as Noga said, I founded Latent together with my partner. We're almost 40 people at this point, and we help companies undergo Gen AI transformations. So to phrase it differently, I've been helping people put AI in production from around 2017. In the past 3 years, we've worked with 32 companies and we've helped them do Gen AI transformation, which means that we've helped them build around 150 agents in total from all different functions, sales, marketing, finance, legal, you name it. We have experience, we've done it. And I want to share with you some of our lessons learned and experience so that you could also take your first steps into this world. First up, why are we here? Why specifically now? And as I said before, I think now is a very good time. We're just at the turning point where the value is clear. There are some nice lead indicators that you can see here in terms of ROI, both in productivity and dollar value. And you can see some very good things from Bain and Company, DataGrid, Cirrus Insights about transformations that companies have done and the value that they've garnered. And here the details are specifically around sales. And the important thing to say is these are real companies and real gains. And anybody who wants this list, happy to share it at the end. We'll probably share some form of the deck at the end of the talk. The objective of the session is to give you 3 things, I think. First of all, to help you understand the different levels of adoption, and specifically through the lens of Copilot. Second of all, I also want to share with you what are the gates between every level and why you won't necessarily be jumping to the 4th level tomorrow morning. And third, I also want to get you started. So I'm going to show a demo and I'm going to discuss different things to automate and I'm going to discuss how to automate them using skills. I'm also going to share a repository of skills for anybody who wants to get started tomorrow morning. They can simply download it and use it. AI doesn't replace. There's this notion when we come to companies, we all always have to work with the subject matter expertise. And there's always this fear of like, if I help train the agent that's going to be doing my work, how well am I going to fare at the end of this process? Will I still be needed to do my work? And the real answer is no. The technology isn't built that way. imperatively speaking, having worked on 150 of these, they don't end up doing that. AI, as it stands now, is a throughput increaser. It doesn't replace people. It may enable you to drop some of the lower performing people, but you aren't going to be downsizing entire teams to zero. That's highly unlikely. And it's unlikely because there's things that an AI very clearly is capable of doing, and there's things that only a human is capable of doing. I've listed a couple of here, so you can see AI is really good at reading a lot of text real fast. So it's able to do research online. And when I show the demo, you'll see how quickly it just goes to the internet, reads 10 or 12 data sources, summarizes them, and understands. It's able to give recommendations based on a directive that you give them, to create documents and update various systems and many more things. This is just a small, non-comprehensive list. The more important thing is that there are certain things that never leave the hands of a human, like making judgment and working on strategy. And in the context of sales, most importantly, the relationship. Even if AI was able to do, let's say, the judgment and the strategy, and you could argue for some things, from the sales perspective, the relationship, the actual looking the person in the eye, the trust, the confidence, the handshake is always going to be in the hands of humans. AI is simply an accelerant for the process. If I break down, there's sort of an interleaving between humans and AI and how we work. So let's say at a very, very high level, we're going to zoom down in a second to the rep level, and we're also going to see from the sales manager level in a moment. A human will set the task, then an AI can execute what the human has requested that it does. It's the human's job to validate. I don't stress this so much because it's not this kind of talk, but one of the main jobs of humans in the real world is to validate the quality of work. We don't have to do all of the work on our own. As we said, AI is very good at many different things. Chief amongst them is creating documents from scratch. But everything we produce with AI, it's a human's job to validate the quality. Then, once the quality is validated, AI can go do, ship, whatever. And at the end of the day, the human has to do the follow-up. In the context of sales, he has to pick up the phone, he has to schedule the next meeting, he has to, schedule the QBR next quarter, and so on. If we zoom down for the rep level, for the account manager level, there's a lot of things that she has to do on a recurring basis. And you can see some of these things in front of you. Okay, so things like owning accounts, so prospecting and list building, discovering and doing qualification, maintaining the relationship, everything that goes into and around a pipeline from the sequencing to the actual negotiation, meetings, and such, all the way through CRM, hygiene, and upsells and stuff like that. There's a lot of things which are common nature when you're a sales representative, which also you as a sales representative will end up doing more than once. And if I just zoom into one of these and let's break down, an engagement. An engagement at 30,000 feet looks something like this. You have to build some kind of curated list of prospects. You have to research all of them. You have to decide which ones and how you're going to engage. Engage, let's say, probably in some kind of sequencing. Then, once you've engaged and you've been successful, you meet the prospect. You have to record it, follow up, and then probably rinse and repeat either part of this loop or a lot of it. We can take it down even into a lower level. Let's go into the weeds. We curate the list. We enrich the list with additional information. Let's say we have a list of companies. We want to know how much money they've raised and how much workforce they have. We can enrich it. We do additional research on the company to figure out potentially how we're going to approach the company. We figure out who we're going to approach. We can research the person. We decide on a channel and an angle to approach that person. We create a message that is personalized. And here I could say a lot about personalization, There's so much to be said about personalization in the age of Gen AI, where 2, 3 years ago, personalization, as long as you approach me and you knew my company and you were able to say something that I've done recently, it was very highly personalized. Now this has been, put on a rocket ship. The amount of personalization in outreach that you can have is it's something else. You can learn almost anything about a person, and you can really, even to the point of using different tones for different functions or different type of people. Then you do the actual sequencing. Those that have been successful, you schedule call wheels, and so on and so forth. Now, every one of these things potentially can lend itself to an automation. Hey, let's just pick a few out of these. And research on the company. Very easy. I have many of these. I have an automation. I can give it a company or a list of companies. It will research. Before every call that I have a call prep. I want to know if it's a person that I'm meeting for the first time. I think it's respectable. I think it's very beneficial as a salesperson to know who's sitting in front of me and what have they done, and maybe something where our two profiles can align by. I have an automation that follows this exact guideline and helps me come prepared. From the sales manager, before we dive into different automation, it's sort of the same, but obviously a sales manager all the way up to a chief revenue officer has nuances that a sales representative might not have. But still, the statement is the same. There is a lot of repetitive work that AI can do very easily. And it's more a question of taking the first steps towards automating it than it is actually a, important, the difference between the sales rep and the sales manager. I'm not saying that the difference isn't important. I'm saying they both equally lend themselves to automation. It's just a different level of what you're trying to do. Okay, so how do we actually go about doing all of these automations? So before I say how we're going to do the automations, let me share with you where I think the industry is going. Now, this is partially, my vision on where the industry is going, and also partially where I've seen it progress in the past year, working on many, many, many different implementations. In 2, 3 years from now, we're all going to have co-pilots that work alongside us. They're going to know our job function. Let's say I'm from marketing. They're going to know what a marketing role is, and they're going to be oriented towards it. They're going to be like a junior marketer. They're going to know our company because we do marketing in a specific way. We do sales in a specific way. We're interested in specific types of customers. We're interested in specific geographic regions, and they're going to work aside you very, very heavily. As time progresses, more and more people are starting their work from AI as opposed to starting their work on their own and then using AI. And the more we progress, the more it's going to be. And eventually, we're each going to have a ongoing conversation with a specific co-pilot that knows our function, knows our company, and works aside us in very high cadence. There's also some small nuances that I could share that aren't important. You have to account how fast things are progressing, both in their capabilities, and that, without that, you couldn't actually automate things because they wouldn't work. And second of all, the models are getting very, very fast. So what takes today the model potentially 7, 10 minutes to do, if you've been working with one of the models, is probably within 2 to 3 years going to take, I can't really say, but I'm going to imagine around 7 to 10 seconds, maybe 20 seconds. So we're going to be able to extract much more out of the models. Now, there are 4 different levels of Copilot that you can reach today. I'm going to go over them from left to right, and then I'm going to discuss. So the first one is a generic Copilot. And here, these are things that you've seen before, okay? When I say generic Copilot, I say one that doesn't know your role, doesn't know your company, doesn't know what you're trying to do. And these are any of the ones that you probably met. ChatGPT is a generic copilot. Codex is a generic copilot. Claude is a generic copilot. Generic not in a derogatory way. They're actually amazing and I use them on a daily basis. Generic in the sense that they're unaware of who you are and what you're trying to achieve. The next level is having them be specific. And the generic ones can be adapted to be more specific by giving them skills. Okay? Skills are sort of like mini automations that teach domain knowledge, domain expertise about what you're trying to achieve. So it's a way to kind of impart your role, your knowledge onto the generic tools. Next, we have the level of bringing in in-house knowledge, like connecting it to the different SaaS databases that we have and products, telling it about how we operate as a company. And the fourth level is back office automation. Now, the third and fourth are gated by what you see in front of you. I'll get into that later. And the fourth level is gated by how well the model is performing. Right now, I want to focus on the first two levels. So if you actually go right now to any of the websites, there are other options other than Claude, Gemini, Codex, but these are kind of the main competitors. You can download their application and you're automatically at the generic level. Now, in order to get to a higher level, specific, you're going to want to use skills. Three things I have to mention here. Skills are most likely going to be relying on connectors. You're going to see in my demo, and I'll discuss it later, there's a lot of value in Claude, in my instance, being able to go to my email, go to my Drive, go to my CRM, stuff like that. So skills are how to do it, and connectors enabled to reach those systems. They are limited to the ones that exist, and it's a bit harder to connect ones which aren't kind of out of the box. And plugins I'm not going to discuss today. Plugins are just bundles of connectors and skills. So they're nothing new. They bundle the two together. They come already a list of connectors that you have and a list of skills that kind of complement those connectors. So let's say there's a plugin for Salesforce. It's going to come with the connector to Salesforce, and it comes with skills that you're probably going to use when you're interacting with Salesforce. We're gearing up to the demo, and here, before I show, I'm going to say that for these things to work, you're going to have to do an initial setup. So first of all, you have to download one of the generic tools. In my case, I said I use Claude. In this specific one, I connected it to ClickUp, to my Gmail, and to my calendar. And I've listed some, not all, of my automations. So all of the automations that you see here in front of you, I have. And I have kind of a good mix of things because I also do sales, and I also have a sales rep that works alongside with me. So I kind of have to have the two levels. And the important thing is that 80% of the value is having the skill. How good it is already, in my opinion, the last mile or the last 20%. Because let me give an example just of one. Okay, let's take the top right, the CRM hygiene. It's really hard to maintain CRM hygiene. Anybody who's worked in sales for a number of years knows it. You always forget to do it just after the meeting, and you always forget to do the next steps. And then the end of the quarter comes, and you have to go back and look at all of the opportunities and make sure that they're all full. And we all know how that makes fields look and how that makes the next steps look. So what I have and what I'll show you in the demo is before I have the weekly meeting with my sales rep, one of the automations that I've scheduled to run on a recurring basis is a CRM hygiene. It automatically flags and sends a message to the person who's in charge of the opportunity. Hey, These opportunities are missing the following fields. And everything in that has been defined by me in plain English. Okay, and I'll take, there are a few here that you can probably kind of decipher on your own. Email prioritization, I can run that at any given point. I can also run that from my phone. Any of the things that you see here, I can also run in between meetings when I'm on my phone. Call prep, I've already discussed before. Notes to CRM is very useful. Um, it's useful because by now, most people have some kind of recorder. We use Google Workspace, so we have the Gemini one. And after every meeting, I will get a summary and it will go to my Gmail. And I've put on a recurring schedule the notes to CRM that looks for meetings that I've had, validates that they actually happened in the calendar, and then suggests for me how to fill the ticket. And all I have to do is click approve. So that's also something very important. I don't deep dive now into how to build skills, but a very important way of using skills is not fully automating them. It's actually creating these small decision gates that the model delegates back to you as a human. Okay, so these are examples of skills, and I've said now, and I'll show in a moment that how to create a skill, how to use a skill, and how to schedule a skill. So you can see here the demo in front of you. And the first thing that I do is simply ask the model, hi, what can you do? And the point of this is just to stress that at this point, it's kind of a generic tool. Next, I go to customization and I hit the skills. And you can see all of the different skills that I have here. This is a subset of the list that you saw before. Here you can see the email triage, the CRM hygienes, the note to CRM. And if I just go into one of them, you can see that it's helping me categorize leads according to the ICP and many other different things. And also here, this is specific, by the way, I have to mention again, I said this a couple of times, I'm using Claude. So what you're seeing here is my customization on top of Claude. If you're using one of the others or end up using one of the others, it will look similar yet different. And here I go to ClickUp, and potentially if I wanted to, I could set granular permissions. I could deny the ability to update or write. I allowed it because I work very heavily on it. Here I can do lead prioritizer, and I could give a specific lead. I could let it run. It's going through the motions here. Lead prioritizer, the slash is actually a trigger for this skill, which is a predefined set of instructions. We'll go over how a skill is built on the next slide. And you can see that initially it takes that company and it's searching the web for additional information that I asked it to find in order for it to help me qualify this lead. I see all kinds of information I can read. I can also control the output format. And that was simply how to trigger a skill. Now I want to show how to create a skill. Here, there's a skill in order to create a skill. So slash is how to make skills actually work. I hit the slash. There's one that comes bundled in if you're using Claude, slash skill creator. And here, the beautiful thing about it is that I have to say not a lot in order to get a very full recipe. So you might have not seen it, but at the beginning of the video, I showed you skills and they were like 2, 3 pages long. So here I'm saying create a skill that helps me forecast my quota attainment. And we're not going to wait for it to complete, but essentially it would think of how to forecast it. It would ask me what system do I keep track of things? How do I want to forecast? What model I want to use? And it would suggest a skill that I could then repeatedly use whenever I wanted. I could also automate it and put it on a weekly, monthly, quarterly schedule. Next up, I want to show you how to put things in a schedule. So I hit the schedule on the side. Then I'm going to hit the setup manually. And here I'm going to say, this is a scheduled task for a weekly CRM hygiene report. And I say that it checks the CRM. And I'm also going to say, simply use the CRM hygiene skill. Okay. I could have given the instructions here from scratch, but the skill encapsulates a lot of information already in it, and I want to leverage that. So I'm scheduling the actual skill itself. Here I'm just saying which model to use, and I know that my weekly meetings with my sales rep happen on Monday, so I want it on Monday morning. Remember that the skill itself also does a number of things. It sends a message on Slack to my sales rep and also sends me a message of the gaps. So I don't have to come here to see it again. I could potentially see it in my Slack already. Great. So we discussed skills. Let me break down what a skill actually is. A skill, the mental model to think of a skill is sort of like a recipe, okay? It's a repeatable task that you have to describe one at once. You can give instructions as you see here below. First, pull accounts from the last 5 activities from ClickUp. 2, pull the last email thread from Gmail. 3, research company, and so on and so forth. The kind of cutoff limit is around 150 instructions that I can give, and the model will be able to follow them pretty well. I'm giving these instructions in plain English. Okay, when I'm saying fetch from ClickUp, fetch from Gmail, I'm not giving a URL. I'm not doing anything special. I'm simply telling the system in plain English what I would like to happen. And it's very comfortable that some integrations simply come built in, and I can leverage them from within the specific Copilot. Great. So we've seen the generic uh, Copilot, and we've seen kind of the way to jump from generic to be specific. The way to do it would be skills. At the end of this talk, I'll also share a repository of the skills that I use so that you can use them. But you can also go ahead and create skills for yourself. You can bring somebody external to help create skills within the organizations. We've done these type of engagements where we discuss with the different teams their needs and what systems they rely on, and then we help define a repository of skills for the company to use. Where do skills break down? Now, skills are limited. I said there are 4 different levels, generic, specific, and an additional 2. They break down once you have the following things. If there's a low risk tolerance and you have for things to be above a certain threshold in reliability, let's say you have to have the skill be successful 97% of the time. There's no real good way to perfect that and measure a skill. There are things that you could try to do, but I will say they don't really scale. Next up, authentication. If you want to connect it to third-party systems, you're gonna have to kind of jump to the 3rd or 4th level. Authentication doesn't come built in. Yes, there are connectors. We saw the ones that are built in, but what isn't in that preset list is hard to tie in. Next up is state. What does this mean? If I want something to run, then remember this specific run, and in later runs, let's say next week, the week after, and so on, remember the previous ones. That is hard. There's no sort of this internal database or organized memory for the Copilot. Scale. Uh, if I'm one rep or one manager and I'm running these things and I have a team of, let's say, even 30, 40, it's gonna work. But if I want to run now on 1,000 customers or a list of 10,000 customers or research 100 companies and I'm going to be searching 50 links for every one of them, that's where things are probably going to start to break down and get errors. Governance and monitoring probably doesn't need additional explanation, and connectivity to internal apps. And the generic tools aren't going to know your internal apps, and there's some additional things that you have to do in order to connect them. So there are 4 levels. From the first to the second, skills are the automations that kind of help us jump. From the second to the third and fourth, the reason to do them are if you're hitting one of these walls, either reliability, authentication, state, scale, governance, connectivity, and there are obviously others, but these are kind of the leading factors. Obviously, if you find that you cannot capture business logic in a skill, that might be an additional insufficient reason. And from the third to the fourth, I'll explain what they are in a moment. Um, the kind of gate is how reliable the skill is. So the third is connecting the generic tool to in-house knowledge. And the fourth is a automation that runs potentially on its own without human intervention, without that medium of me talking to the co-pilot in a chat interface. Now, when can I forgo this back and forth with a co-pilot and let it run as a back office automation? I can do that once I have enough confidence that I'm no longer needed as a human. Again, one caveat I want to say to that, it doesn't mean, sorry, side note, it doesn't mean that I can't have escalations. Obviously, I can say, okay, I'm confident enough to have this run as a back office automation on its own. If for some reason a model, looks at it and isn't really confident at its own answer, I can escalate it to a human in various different ways. I've already kind of given examples of this slide. I meant to leave it to later, so I'm not going to do this slide again. These are examples of when I might want to go to level 3 or level 4. What I want to kind of surmise by saying is I really think now is a good time to dive into this. Companies are starting to see real value from creating these automations internally. Anybody who wants can either shoot me a mail or shoot one of the account managers at Blend a mail. Will share this deck. It will have 2 things in it. First of all of the kind of articles that showcase why now is the right time. Second of all, it will also have this repository. In this repository, you'll find a subset of the skills that I use on a recurring basis as somebody who's both doing sales and in charge of sales. And I really recommend to start this journey now. It doesn't happen overnight. I don't believe in downloading 1,000 different skills and calling your organization AI first or AI ready. It's a progression. You have to get used to using these skills, and trying to wake up one blue morning and automate 100 different tasks is going to run into issues. So it's a small and slow progression. I recommend starting to download this repository. And I thank you very much for your time. Anybody who joined this webinar, since it was specifically built for you by invite, we're also going to be happy to have a 2-hour discovery with myself, where I can share more and I can help understand what's right for you in your organization. I've put my LinkedIn here, which feel free to send me a message. You can also reach out to your account manager at Blend. And mainly what I'll be discussing with you is where you're at right now and what you would be your path to kind of level 3 and 4 under value. We don't do things just to do them. We always want to know that if we reach the goal, there's going to be value at the end of the line. And that's composed of many different things. So I really want to thank you for your time. Feel free to reach out to us in any of the 2 ways that I mentioned. And now I think we're going to look if there are any questions and answer Q&A, sorry.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. It's been insightful. We have some very interesting questions. I'll try to group them by topic. there are quite a few questions about security, CISO. How do you back up information, especially if you're on stage one or stage two? Like sales are very attached to their data. How do they make sure that it doesn't go away or have some kind of limits
Okay,
in
so
place?
there's a lot of questions to unpack here. First of all, security-wise, that's always a question. I can't recommend and I can't make a decision for everybody, but I will say that I've worked a lot with the various providers that I mentioned, and they're all A, reliable. B, there have been very few stories of mishaps and things that have happened, which also helps me build confidence. And C, if you're a really large company, we've also had some of our customers sign a direct BAA with the providers so that they make sure that regardless of what is already written in the terms of service, they also have a specific agreement to protect their information. Now, the second part of the question was around uh, making sure that information is retained. And the answer to that is twofold. First of all, if you're working into one of the with one of the systems that has a native connector, the information can be retained there. If you're working as I am in ClickUp, which I use as our CRM, if you're using Salesforce, if you save the information there, it should be saved. If you're fearful of the system potentially deleting something in a third-party system, let's say Salesforce, there are two things that I can recommend. First of all, you can deny the update capability or the write capability. So not let the model update anything. You're going to be reducing the potential value and the acceleration of productivity. That's for sure. But that kind of is a fail-safe mechanism. An additional, which I leverage many times, I will say, is telling the model to let you know exactly what it's going to do before it's doing it. So let's say the CRM to the notes to CRM that I showed you. That doesn't happen entirely automatically. It happens 90% of the way, and then I get a list to approve. It tells me which opportunity is going to update. It maps out the different fields, what it's going to put into every field. And only once I confirm to the model that this is allowed to do, will it go and perform the action? That still runs the risk of it trying to perform a write and writing over something else. There's no 100% guarantee in the new age. When we're talking about Gen AI, we're always rolling the dice on at best 99% accuracy.
Thank you. And I'm assuming they can also create some kind of like a backup skill or something just as a safety mechanism.
Um, yeah, but probably backing up like Salesforce and stuff like that, I wouldn't do through
No,
skill.
the small tasks. And
Okay.
sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm just like if it's a third-party system, then it should back up itself, and if not, then we don't actually have a state or memory. That's one of the issues, like of the first two levels. There isn't anything to back up. Yes, the threads do save themselves. Like if I have a conversation and then I have a new conversation, another conversation, they're gonna exist there. But if something happens and they get wiped, there's no real good way to back that up, unfortunately.
Okay. To the next question, which is around different roles within the team and specific, I don't know, does it require sales team to be more technological if they want to use the new agentic model, or what changes within the team following this?
Yeah, so obviously different roles should have different permissions. And let's say eh, when, I don't know, in sales, let's give an example, not everybody should be privy to see everybody's contracts. You want to enable certain people to see some and others to see some and managers to see everything. When I was at Google, we had exactly that. Hey, you would be able to see all of your accounts spend on the cloud. But you couldn't just go and look at what Apple was spending on Google Cloud. That was somebody else's account. That's how the system ran. Um, Here, in order to do that, again, you're going to have to be on level 3 and 4. And it's one of those reasons, like I listed it as authentication, but it's authentication and authorization. Like it's both of those things. So on the first two levels, that's going to be a bit tough to do. On the third and fourth level, that's exactly why they exist.
And in terms of the actual, like if a sales rep works in a certain way, how does this affect his day to day? Does he need to be more technical or it's very simple? If
That's a
it's
great
stage
question.
1 or 2.
That's a great question. I think same way. I don't think sales rep have to be more technical. Everything that I showed between level 1 and 2 is through skills, and skills are defined in plain English. And in order to create a skill, I have to hit the slash, skill create, describe it in plain English, and that gets me 80% of the way. Are there things beyond that to do to perfect it? For sure. Can I deep dive into how to build skills? For sure. Like there's also a talk that I give about that. Will people who are a bit more technical be able to extract a little more value out of it? Yes. I'll give just like a short example. Uh, Skills can also leverage scripts. So like small pieces of code. And let's say I wanted to run a forecast, I could tell it to create a skill that runs a forecast and does that forecast with a specific type of piece of code. For me, let's say as somebody with a technical background, I could look at that piece of code and say, wait, that's not exactly what I wanted. For somebody who's not as technical, maybe that part is kind of still gated. But again, I want to say for the most part, having the skill is the 80%, and the last 20% um, it takes some effort.
Okay, and another topic is around the third and the fourth pillars that you mentioned, the stages. First question is how long does it take to implement something like bigger and more with the authentication and the connectivity and so on? And the second question, which is a sub question to this one, is how dynamic this is. Like if you're setting a workflow and the company evolves and you need to make adjustments, how will it affect the workflow, the existing automation?
So the first question, the time to first agent that we also always like to try and kind of pin the flagpole on is around 4 weeks. If you know what you're trying to do and what systems you want to connect and what information it's going to rely on and what success look like for the agent or the co-pilot, I use those words interchangeably, then it's around 4 weeks. Like somebody has to come in, they have to onboard, they have to define the system, they have to create kind of a V0 that works, and then they have to go through 1 or 2 iteration cycles to see that it actually is performing at the level that's expected. And the ones after happen much, much quicker. And I want to say that I believe we're going towards a world where after organization is done, let's say 5 or 6 of these, eventually, and I predict this is going to be in around a couple of months from now, there are going to be systems that are going to make the 80% much easier, that are going to help you connect the internal tools, that are going to help you define what success looks like, that are going to do the actual reliability testing for you. Like one of the things that we try to do for organization is kind of pull the reliability back as much as possible. So like kind of make level 3 very much rely on that reliability. What was the second part of your question, Noga? I missed that.
It was how dynamic it is once you set it and the company, I don't know, changes the something within the workflow. Does it require a rebuild or
Okay, so that has to be accounted for in a smart way. And I'll give an example. We build a lot of support agents for companies. We've done, I don't know, over 15 of those in the past 3 years. And support is always going to change. You're always going to be releasing new features, and customers are always going to be asking questions about said features. And the question always arises, like, what happens, when these new features arise? Do we have to bring you in to change the code to do that again? And the answer is no. You have to plan for it in advance. And we work together with the company based on what's best for them. A lot of times it's like we use buckets in the cloud. It's kind of a service that they have, which is very similar to Google Drive or the respective ones in Microsoft. And we put the information there and we make sure that the agent or copilot, again, same thing as far as I'm concerned, is always looking at that location and is able to be updated automatically. And for anybody, even who's not technical, to upload to a bucket is very, very easy. And those are interchangeable. If the company wants to keep it in a database, if the company wants to expose an API or something and make that available, you can have the agent rely on dynamic sources. That's the point at the end of the day. You just have to make sure you're designing it that way, not putting, let's say, going back to an example of a skill. Yes, if you just copy paste all of your features into the skill, it's probably going to work. But when you end up changing the features, you're going to forget to change the skill. So the right way to design it would be to have the skill have an external dependency, which you know that you always update. Let's say Confluence. That's something that people always use for release notes. That would be one place. You point the skill at the Confluence page instead of pasting it inside.